Often when we read comics from DC and Marvel and other large publishers, there tends to be a legacy, a history of characters that we know about and that, we've stuck with for a very long time. Sometimes though, there is changes that new creative teams who helm long-lasting characters, long-beloved characters, that fans just don't really like. And arguably it's for a good reason. Either it's because they've drastically changed the characterization, or it's just not good writing. So today we're taking a closer look at some of those examples with our list of the top 10 superhero changes nobody liked. Let's jump in. Starting us off in at number 10, Hail Hydra. In 2017, Steve Rogers became a Nazi. Well, okay, a duplicate of him from another reality was a Nazi. Specifically a Hydra sleeper agent who wreaked havoc on the 616 universe when he came out and started pursuing world domination in the name of Hydra. A bunch of characters ended up dying, and it felt like everything Captain America stood for was kind of obsolete during this arc. Like many of the changes on our list, this one did not stick. Besides, it was an alternate version of Cap anyway. But the Secret Empire conflict did make for a few drastic changes to the 616 universe, like killing off beloved longtime characters the likes of Black Widow, although she is back now. She's been cloned, because death is irrelevant in comics. Moving on to number 9, Spider-God. Spider-Man's origin story is arguably one of the most recognized in pop culture, bitten by a radioactive spider. The death of Uncle Ben. Great power means great responsibility. It's iconic. So, why ruin a good thing? That's a question a lot of Spider-Man fans had when J. Michael Straczynski decided to mix things up. Motivated by keeping up with the mythos of the character more in line with the first Spider-Man film, starring Tobey Maguire, which featured biological web shooters. He introduced a retcon in which Peter was actually linked to a totemic spider god instead of the spider bite being a coincidence. Peter was then wounded, built himself a cocoon, and then came out of it with more new powers. Unfortunately, this won't be the last time that we mention the web slinger on our list. Despite being one of Marvel's oldest and most beloved characters, he's also seen his fair share of retcons and adjustments that have outraged fans over the years. But more to come. Let's move on to our next number. In at 8, Goku. Moving away from the panels and taking a look up at the big screen, let's talk about our first movie adaptation change on our list that really pissed fans off. In 2009, Dragon Ball Evolution was released. It was a feature film meant to adapt part of the Dragon Ball saga, and it starred Justin Chatwin as Goku. Yes, that's right, they cast a white dude to be the lead for a live-action adaptation of an incredibly popular manga and anime. Rumor has it that the studio behind the film believed that casting a non-white actor would just make the film less marketable, but really it just made it more offensive and a complete joke. Plus, to be fair, it was not a good film at all. There was a lot wrong with it beyond Chatwin's casting. Speaking of whitewashing though, that brings us to our next number. In at 7, The Ancient One. As much as we all love Tilda Swinton, or maybe as much as I love Tilda Swinton, this was a bit of a controversial move on Marvel's part. In Marvel Studios' Doctor Strange, Swinton was cast as the Ancient One. The Ancient One in the comics had long been seen as a problematic character, a stereotypical and arguably offensive Asian character who serves as Strange's mentor and teacher. Marvel Studios changed the character to be a Celtic interpretation of the Ancient One instead, which had a lot of fans pissed off. Despite the racial stereotyping, many felt that Marvel Studios had a responsibility to do better than the comics by casting an Asian actor, ultimately providing better Asian representation. In at number 6, Hal Jordan and Parallax. In the aftermath of the Death of Superman arc, Hal Jordan's home of Coast City was destroyed by one of those knockoff Superman replicas who rose up to replace the Man of Steel when he was presumably deceased. That's a whole other Pandora's box for another day though. The focus here is Hal. He went a little mental and decided to use his ring to recreate his home and save the 7 million innocent people who had died because of this tragedy. That went against the rules of being Green Lantern. You can't use your ring for personal gain. The Green Lantern Corps called him out, and what did Hal do? He went on a rampage. Fought them, killed some of them, and this comic book cover will forever be seared into our memory. Oh, the rings. Turns out he was actually being possessed by Parallax, who had manipulated Hal into getting its freedom. So Hal was kind of technically free of the blame. Sort of. It took years for Batman to trust him again, causing the two to have some major conflict for a long time. Up next at number 5, Heroes Reborn. During the Onslaught saga, the titular villain, who had been spawned from the darkest aspects of Charles Xavier's consciousness and Magneto's mind combined, created such a kerfuffle for the X-Men that Marvel's other superhero teams had to step up to help out. That was, in doing so and saving the day, the Avengers and the Fantastic Four actually sacrificed themselves, dying in the process. But there's a twist. Turns out Franklin Richards had created a pocket universe in which all of the heroes were essentially reborn. They all returned. This was during a time when Marvel was outsourcing some of their main titles to a bunch of different creators. Money thing. And this crossover event was spearheaded by Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld. Except it was absolute garbage. Characters were changed in ways that many fans despised, and their new characterizations felt more like bastardizations. Sure, you can pull something off like that in an alternate universe, but in the 616, not so much. Also, the art was terrible. It's kind of like the disgusting cherry on top. Rob can't draw feet. In at number 4, Power Girl. Power Girl has had a rough one when it comes to retcons. The DC superhero started off as a character from Earth 2, the alternate Earth in the multiverse that is home to the Golden Age versions of DC characters. She was the Earth 2 version of Supergirl, which made perfect sense. But then Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, which essentially reset the DC multiverse and led to some major changes for some of its most beloved individuals. Power Girl got an overhaul, one that made little sense at the time, to many fans' dismay. So the event had wiped out Earth 2, and she then just existed on DC's Prime Earth, so her origin story was reinvented to make her a descendant of an Atlantean sorcerer. Kinda left field, isn't it? Also made zero sense. Eventually things were retconned back during Infinite Crisis, and she became Supergirl from another timeline again, thankfully. Up next, number 3, Ric Grayson. As my fellow host Sasha succinctly put it, now I can read Nightwing again. Oh god. In case you have been under a rock as far as DC is concerned lately, and to be fair, at times I wouldn't blame you, you may be unaware that Dick Grayson, the boy wonder Robin who grew up and became vigilante Nightwing, leader of the Teen Titans, and even helmer of the Batman mantle at one point, lost his memory and started calling himself Rick. It was really lame. He didn't even spell Rick with a K, that's how edgy it was. Which like I also don't get, because like were they just trying to make it distinct from Dick? But it literally rhymes with Rick. This all went down when Nightwing was shot in the head with a sniper rifle by KG Beast. He survived, but he lost his memory, dealt with severe trauma, and then moved to Bloodhaven, becoming a taxi driver. He started to drink heavily and gamble, and he was aggressive. And he had no memory of his life as a crime fighter. So when he did find out, he tried very hard to wipe that whole past life clean and even set fire to his hideout. Eventually he couldn't keep his true nature buried and ended up becoming a vigilante again, readopting the Nightwing mantle when helping out the Bloodhaven police. Then in Nightwing issue 68, his memory came back after a confrontation with his ancestor William Cobb, and he found out that his amnesia had actually been further manipulated by the Court of Owls in an attempt to make him their next Talon. In at number 2, the black symbiote suit. In the aftermath of the first Secret Wars event, Spider-Man returned home to Earth wearing a black costume that he had acquired from a strange machine while on Battleworld. Fans were not keen on this change, and it was promptly altered, with the black suit eventually being a living symbiote alien that Mr. Fantastic had to help Parker remove before it was too late. That symbiotic alien would go on to become Venom, bonding with host Eddie Brock and becoming one of Spidey's most iconic antagonists. But where did the idea for a black suit come from? Back in 1982, a fan from Illinois named Randy Schuler mailed Marvel a letter with an idea for a new costume for the web-slinger. Marvel purchased that idea for a mere $220. The design was then modified by Mike Zeck. While a lot of fans weren't into it, the alien costume saga is actually known for how mature the relationship between Parker and Mary Jane Watson was depicted. And really, something fantastic came out of the controversy, so it's kind of a win-win, right? That's not so much the case for our next number though. Last but not least, in at number 1, the Superior Spider-Man. We are ending off this list with yet another Spider-Man controversy that fans really did not like. We're talking about the Superior Spider-Man and the Dying Wish story arc. Now in case you're unfamiliar, Dying Wish was an arc in which Otto Octavius, Dr. Octopus, was dying, and he decided to switch bodies with Peter Parker so that his consciousness went into Parker's body and vice versa. The result meant that Peter was trapped in Otto's body, causing him to die. Otto went on to resume Peter's identity as Spider-Man, except upgraded his suit and called himself the Superior Spider-Man. And while he was morally ambiguous, he did manage to turn out to be a bit of a hero in the end. As you can imagine, people were outraged with the whole thing, so much so that eventually Peter was brought back by some convoluted comic book magic and the status quo was returned. Alright, there we have it friends. What other changes in comic books that you loved have you totally hated? Why? Let us know in those comments below. If you guys dug this video, you know what to do. Hit that thumbs up button, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd if you haven't already. We'd love it if you became part of our nerd squad. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I will catch you all in the next video.